This is my first time moderating this panel, and I'm super excited about it. These are excellent content marketing programs, and I hope you all learn a lot about it. We're going to start by, I'd like each of our panelists to give a high-level description of your program, and then tell the audience what was different about it. How was it unique compared with anything you've done before? So Shannon, would you like to start?
Sure, absolutely. Hi everybody, Shannon Renz. I am the Director of Marketing Automation for SAP Ariba. So my team is within the Marketing Operations department. And our program essentially was a group of automated persona lifecycle nurture programs, the first of its kind at Ariba. Prior to that, we had Marketo installed, so that's our automation platform, but they were really using it just as batch and blast email, so kind of spray and pray, limited segmentation, and just emailing content, webinar invitations, event invitations, things like that. And it was just very low engagement rates, so we definitely had some data issues on the open rate side, very low. But then when you look into the content engagement, still low click-to-open rates. So we decided to make the most of Marketo and really build out engagement programs that were based on persona and lifecycle status. So we engaged Demand Gen, our friends at Demand Gen, to help us with the content mapping exercise to really orchestrate all the teams involved in it. So we're in marketing operations. We work with our content marketing team, our solutions marketing, our field marketing, and our web and digital team. So a lot of players involved in the program as well. So it's about 3-month engagement with Demand Gen, and then we launched them mid-year and saw just astounding results. If you heard at the luncheon too, that we had a 400% increase in click-to-open rates, like immediately. Our MQL to lead, which is essentially SQL in demand terms, went up about 25% in the first month from our web inquiries. So amazing results so far.
Excellent, thank you, Shannon. Bradley, why don't you talk about your ABM campaign?
Okay. You asked us for an overview of what it was and how it was different, and basically what it is what is different. We, like most companies, hammer our prospects and customers through all kinds of digital channels, mostly email and like webinars and social and everything like that. So we were like, let's just like send them something in the mail. So we designed this whole campaign around direct mail. It was really 2 phases. The first one we were still learning, and it was very broad. And we've gotten a lot more kind of refined and smarter since. But so the first one was we selected, I think it was like 170-ish prospects, and sent them an Amazon tap with like ChannelAdvisor, custom like branding all over the box with a handwritten note from a sales rep, and then sent it to them, and also worked with Amazon to develop an Alexa skill for the tap, so they could open the box, turn it on, sync it up, and then say, Alexa, read ChannelAdvisor's blog, or read me the e-commerce news, which was our blog. We do e-commerce software. And so that was that. And it was really, the whole point was to try to get moving, jostle free some of these like stale prospects in our pipeline. It was just people that either we had just gotten nowhere with, that just refused to answer our calls anymore, or we had just never talked to and had never seen any kind of sign of life from them. So the entire point was just to try something completely opposite, different, and send them a piece of mail. Everyone likes getting mail, and no one really gets it much anymore. So that was the first one. And the second one, we got a little more refined with, and instead of a tap, which was a little more expensive, we went with a Amazon Fire tablet, a Fire 7 tablet. And then we designed a very, very cool custom box that was like in the shape of our logo, and they open it up, and there's a lot of cool like messaging, and there was another handwritten note from the sales rep to the person, to their name, exactly who they are. And as soon as they turned on the tablet, an app would launch with a slide presentation that we put together based on their needs. And we developed 2 different decks. One was for digital marketing needs, and one was for more Amazon needs. And obviously we sent the tablets to the ones that our sales reps thought based on what their needs were. So that was the second one, and we had a lot of really good success with that. by the time that we submitted the nomination, we had already like broken even ROI-wise and saw some good return. But since then, since like October, whenever we sent that, we've seen even more from that same campaign. Like they're still coming in, seeing a lot of good success. So that's basically overview.
Thank you. And Theresa.
Hi, Theresa Freas. I'm the Senior Director of Product or Portfolio Marketing at Equifax, and we are part of the product marketing team in the organization. And our campaign was, well, let me ask you, what do you think of when you think of Equifax? Probably credit file data. And as we were growing the vertical I was hired in to help expand from a $50 million, very retail banking focused vertical to a $400 million banking and lending, broader financial services vertical. And one of the big things we had to do is think of, okay, so how are we going to build awareness that we're not just a credit data provider for a very finite set of people or companies. And so when we took a step back to look across the organization, what's readily available, what are we doing today that we could really capitalize on, we discovered, a set of reporting that our chief economist was already doing. So we really honed in on that and turned it into insights and helped our customers, make better decisions, because we created this webinar campaign that shared economic insights, shared credit trends, and then we have a special topic each quarter that's really insightful and timely. And this quarter it's going to be, we're going to touch on, what are the impacts, potential impacts of the tax cuts. Some other things are, what are the prepayments and defaults? How are they trending right now, and how is that looking compared to history? So what we're trying to do is take all this data, this vast amount of data that we have, and help our partners, our customers, make better decisions, business decisions out of it. And so it's a quarterly webinar campaign. How it's different from in the past is this is bigger than anything we've done before. We've done spot webinars here and there where you have your series of email campaigns and you're promoting it, you have your social and digital. This is quarterly, so we're doing it every quarter, and what's great is that gives us a chance to iterate and improve each time. When they were describing it, when we were receiving our awards during lunch, I was kind of embarrassed because all these awesome numbers were coming out, and then you had, okay, they had 400 attend. Okay, well, when you look at the whole year, we had about 6,000 registrants for the webinars, all told, and about 60%, 50 to 60% attendee rate. And I think that was one of the successes that we really felt was people were engaged. They were coming back. They were coming time and time again because what we were giving them was new and insightful information they could really use in their organization.
That's an excellent point, Theresa, and I think there's a lot of opportunity to bring in newsiness, timeliness into content. We were talking a little bit earlier about some of the sort of adjustments you had to make working with your internal expert to make sure that that information was most recent and most relevant. Can you talk a little bit about your relationship with your internal expert and how that evolved and how you had to kind of adjust what you're doing to really make her knowledge shine?
Absolutely. Amy Cruz-Cutts is our chief economist, and she is probably one of the top 10 to 15 in the nation. A lot of companies and even the government will seek her input on the economy. And so once I got beyond that, oh my gosh, I'm talking to a bigwig, it really became a partnership, and talking with Amy and getting to understand her style and helping her to understand what the needs of the market were for our vertical. I think one of the biggest learnings we had is at the end of the day, we all like to have presentations to upload to the webinar platform a week in advance would be great, a day in advance. We've learned to be very flexible because Amy is in such high demand that I think it was 11:30 one morning when we had our 1 o'clock webinar that we were just getting the presentation from Amy. So it's good in that, it gives her an opportunity also to make sure it is up to the minute, in that she may be making fine-tune adjustments to her presentation. So part of that learning was just being flexible and understanding her style and working with it.
Excellent, thank you. So Bradley, one of the things that struck me about your campaign, and it's relevant to a lot of the things that were discussed today in terms of remembering that your prospects aren't they're people. And you know, people don't just live in the digital world, they live in the physical world. And your campaign brought together the digital and the physical in a very interesting way. Tell me how you made the choice for what you sent, and how that discussion went in terms of how you finally decided on the Amazon, or the Tap and the Fire, which were loaded with your apps.
Gotcha. Well, there's a lot to answer there. As far as blending the digital and the physical, it's kind of what I mentioned earlier. I mean, the digital was there. I mean, we were still hammering them, and they just weren't responding. And it will always be there. We just wanted to try something different, something to sort of stand out. And it's basically what all of us are trying to do is just break through the noise, like through the clutter. And it was like, if a shiny blue box in your office, like, breaks through, like, if that gets like 3 minutes of your time, then like we succeeded, rather than just deleting another email or screening another phone call or whatever. So we're like, let's just try to send something. And honestly, the first campaign that we did with the Tap was probably a little bit much. It was a little unfocused. We learned a lot from it. Like I said, we're probably on our 5th iteration of this kind of now, and we've gotten better and more kind of targeted in how we go about it. First one was very general. We didn't really make a list. I mean, there were all clients that we wanted to move down the funnel. They were just kind of stuck in the very, very top of the funnel. And our goal for the project was just to jostle them free and get conversations with sales reps. The whole point is to just get salespeople on the phone. It wasn't to close deals. That's ultimately the goal, but the goal of this was just to get a conversation going. And it worked. And as far as the Amazon stuff, we work in the e-commerce space. We do e-commerce solutions. So Amazon is on our mind all day long, every day anyway. We help our clients like sell through Amazon. So it was just a natural fit that we would actually use an Amazon product to get their attention. And it actually kind of dovetailed nicely with like receiving a package in the mail is very similar to like e-commerce, where you click on something online and a package shows up there. So we did some playful stuff like that with the handwritten notes of like, getting a package is fun, right? Like we can help your clients, blah, blah, blah. We can help you ship more of these to more of your consumers and that kind of thing.
And I thought it was interesting this morning with Jeff Marco's presentation, where he talked about that when they're doing an ABM campaign, they find out their target's alma mater and they send them a mug with their college alma mater on it. And he pointed out it's something they're going to use. And it's the same with your physical prize. They're going to use that.
Absolutely.
So they're going to remember you.
Absolutely. One thing we learned with like the Tap, and then we developed our Alexa skill and everything, we realized there was just a little bit too much friction there. There was like 5 steps that they had to go through, and they could very easily just be like, I'm not wasting my time on this. And they give it to their grandkid and they move on. Or like they give it to like somebody as a gift for Christmas. The Fire tablets were both cheaper and more just usable. Like they were just a cooler present. So we actually saved money and gave them something that they could probably use, or their kid or their spouse or somebody can use.
Excellent. So Shannon, one thing I wanted to ask you about that we talked a little bit about was the planning that went into your very focused, very targeted series of nurtures.
Right.
And you told me that the whole project lasted 3 months, and 2.5 months of that time was planning. So talk about that planning a little bit and how important it was to get it right.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, especially considering it was really our first foray into automated nurture programs, it's like where to start, right? I mean, when you look at our audiences and our solution segments and our regions and industries that we were targeting, I mean, conceptually, there could be thousands of nurture workflows that we could build. So where do we start? We also were in a great position where we had a plethora of content too, right? That if you go to ariba.com, our resource library, there's a ton of content on there, right? So, but it's like, where do we start? So, Demand Gen in particular really guided us through taking a data-driven approach to goal setting. So one of our priority areas, like let's look at our funnel and diagnose the problem areas. And what we all knew intuitively throughout the marketing organization was really top of the funnel. There was a ton of bottlenecks. It was inefficient. How do we solve that? For example, we get thousands of web inquiries every month, right? People downloading content, requesting demos, registering for on-demand webinars, et cetera. historically, before we had a good lead scoring model and automated nurture programs, all of those inquiries would go directly to our inside sales team. So as you can imagine, after a couple of weeks, they just start ignoring them, right? They just downloaded content. Why am I going to call them? So they were just sitting there. So that was really like, okay, we need to solve this immediately, right? We need to have nurture in place to keep them engaged, to further qualify them, so our DMEs, our inside sales team, know when they get those inquiries now, they're warmed up, they're qualified for you. Take them seriously, essentially. So it was great to have that data-driven approach too, on the life cycle side, but also on the content side, really analyzing our resource library. Are people consuming this content at all, right? And through what channels? What's really going to resonate? Working with Sirius and looking at their benchmarks and other content marketers, as well as what type of content really performs well in those nurture programs. And we knew we wanted bite-sized content, right? People are inundated with emails. Nobody's going to really take the time to thoroughly read a 25-page white paper, right? I wish I had that time, but who does, right? So we really focused on videos and other kind of blog articles, just bite-sized, relevant information to drive that as well. So yes, we did take about 2.5 months of plotting all of that out, mapping all of the wealth of content that we had to the stages in the buyer's journey by audience as well, map those to the life cycle stages. And after that, the build, so my team does the build in Marketo as well, and it was so smooth for them. None of them are here, so they'll be okay with me saying that, but, and I chipped in a little bit too, but because we had everything mapped out and prioritized so well in advance, that the build was smooth sailing.
Okay, thank you. So, how did each of you come about to define your goals for success?
I'll take that one.
All right.
Okay. At the onset last year when we started the campaign, we really had a goal of, 250 would be great. Let's shoot for 500 registrants. And our goal was brand awareness, thought leadership. We didn't have a concrete revenue tied to it, though this year we want to start moving that direction more. At the end of the day, we still had 1.6 million in opportunities that tied with the campaign. But we were looking more of that engagement and awareness. And so when we blew through the 500 with the first and second email, we have another webinar coming up next week. And the first email we sent out for this first quarterly one, we had 700 people register. And that was 3 weeks out of the event. So we keep, trying to top our previous, registrations and having over 50% attendance. That to us is a win because people are engaged.
Yeah, good. Bradley, how about you? How did you set goals on what you wanted to accomplish?
Well, for the first campaign, we were still pretty broad, and A, we obviously wanted to break even on our investment, but B, like I said before, we were just trying to unlock a lot of some stale prospects in the buyers in the buying funnel and create new opportunities there. And I'm not, I promise our legal team I would not talk about pipeline and actual numbers, but we did, about 37% of the opportunities that we created were brand new from that campaign. And we immediately broke even and saw about 150% ROI, and that's still climbing because we're still making money off of it.
Yeah, and I think it's excellent that your initial goal was to break even, because sometimes it takes experimentation, particularly when you're doing such a targeted project.
And now that we have a baseline of okay, what this kind of looks like, we can set more realistic goals for okay, we're going to invest this much. We want to see this much pipeline. We want to see this much growth through the pipeline. We want to see this number of new opportunities and so on.
Excellent. Shannon, what about you? Do you feel as if you've established a baseline for these types of nurture programs going forward now?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was pretty clear working with demand gen and going through the planning process what our KPIs should be, right? It's really on the engagement. So how are people consuming the content that we have? and it's also velocity, right? So how quickly are people moving from inquiry to MQL stage for us? Because previously it was really hard to measure that, right? And even measuring those conversion rates, because everything went to our inside sales team as an MQL essentially, right? So I think we have a really good benchmark now for that. I mean, we've noticed the days to MQL are steadily increasing, which is great. I think our goals are shifting now in such that we need to be really focused on feeding the nurture programs that we have right now. You know, through an inbound strategy, making sure that it's constant, right? Because we notice a huge spike, right? And a huge volume entering those nurture programs on launch, and then it kind of dies down over time. And sure, we have campaigns, right? There's some ebbs and flows there. So there's that, and there's also the continued content optimization too, right? So we're never happy with even just like 454% increase in click-to-open rates, right? I want 500%, why not? So we've established a cadence of reporting and reviews with our content marketers as well to review results. How do we improve subject lines? We do A/B testing all the time. What are the new content pieces that are out there? And also take our findings and advise on what they should create, you know, for content too, right? Hey, we're seeing videos are way outperforming podcast or an ebook, right? And to use our findings of how people are engaging with our content to drive content creation as well.
Excellent. So I know that all of us in this room, we always have constraints in our work, whether usually it's money or time. I think often it's both. Or or all of the above, and sometimes it's intelligence, it's a skill you don't have or knowledge you don't possess. I was curious about what were some of the constraints that you all had, if anybody wants to comment on something that was limiting you that you overcame.
I think just that last point you made about the education, right? I think our organization, because again, they weren't really leveraging Marketo and all the automation capabilities, that there was a lot of education that we needed to do of why are we automating this? What is a nurture program? Why don't we just keep sending out email blasts? What type of content? So I know I keep mentioning demand gen, but I mean, frankly, one of the reasons why we wanted a partner like them is to provide that third-party credibility and that level of education that we needed to our content marketing team, to our field marketing team, et cetera, to get them up to speed on why are we doing this? Why should you be involved in it? And it's funny now when we kind of told everybody in the organization that we were applying for this award, they were like so excited, and they're like, I'm sorry I gave you such a hard time putting it together, but like they see the payoff now, right? They're so excited about how much people are engaging with the content that they build, that it excites them and sees that, and they don't have to put together emails all the time, right? They've kind of done the work up front for us, and now it's running, and we get to do the fun stuff of optimization now.
And do you feel like the optimization is sort of a continuation of that education as well?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so.
I bet
but
it would be.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's more exciting now. Right. It doesn't feel like a chore that, oh, I have to review these nurture programs again and figure it out. People get excited when they create new content. They can't wait to like, oh, we should put this in nurture, right?
Well, good. Yeah. And especially now that you have an award, people are going to be more excited about it.
Well, hope
That in
so.
their face.
Yeah.
So what would you say were some of the key technologies or platforms that you took advantage of?
I'll give a quick example.
Okay.
We used one platform, and I won't name them because it was a negative experience, but it was a platform that we used for internal webinars. And for our first one last year, what we quickly discovered was they were blocking external domains. Again, we used it for internal webinars. There was a block for external domains. This is an external webinar. Didn't quite work. So we quickly had to work with that platform to make sure they opened it up for everyone. And then we switched platforms in the second quarter and beyond. So, some of that early learning with the platforms. And today we use Eloqua as our platform. And then we have Siebel that we use on the CRM side.
Okay.
And so, we were talking about constraints earlier too, is sometimes I find that there's a constraint in trying to do a lot with optimization and, operationalizing. When you have such different systems and platforms, it is hard at times to make sure that, we're doing the most and doing what we can with each of them.
Okay. All right. That was a great lessons learned example. So, Bradley, I was going to ask you, what are some of the lessons learned? You've made a few references to the first campaign we did this, the second we did that. What would you say were your top level lessons learned?
Well, the first one actually ties in what she said about some people on your team giving you a hard time. The number one takeaway that we've taken from this is to get sales, pitch this to sales, get sales buy-in. I know that's not revolutionary, but it goes way beyond just getting the director of sales being like, cool, let's do that, whatever, I'll sign off, I'll tell my team to do it. But really make the sales team care about this cool thing that you're putting a lot of hours and a lot of resource into. And we didn't do a good enough job of that in the beginning of really pitching, this is what they're getting. This is what's on the slides when they open up this cool box and see this app that just explodes. A lot of them didn't buy into it, and you could see they just sort of half-heartedly did it. If sales and marketing need to be doing this together, again, that's not newsworthy. I mean, everybody knows that, but if they don't buy into it, then they're not going to have success with it. There was a few key sales reps who, it wasn't a coincidence, they had the most success with this because they were the ones who really bought into it. And they kept coming back and be like, can I send another one? Can I send another one? Can I send another one? Because they were the ones who actually were trying and playing by the rules, following it up within 48 hours, really referencing, having fun with their personalized notes and all that kind of stuff. The rest of the reps, sometimes it would be an inconvenience for them. So they just hadn't bought in. So I guess the communicating your cool idea to sales and to get their enthusiasm was the biggest takeaway that we've got. So you're working together, and so you're they're identifying the right kind of prospects, you're sending the right kind of stuff, they're following up in time, and you're working in tandem.
Okay, good one. How about you, Shannon? Lesson learned?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's team alignment for sure, and selling the value up front, right, to get people excited. But I also think it's when you're kind of entering new territory to start small too, right, and show some early success and then scale up. I think that was a lesson learned that, we built 4 complete life cycle nurtures at once for each of our main audiences. So probably in hindsight for everybody's sanity too, and optimization. Start with one, right, and let it run and see the successes, tweak it as necessary, course correct, and then scale up.
Excellent. Okay, well, we only have about 2 more minutes left, so I was wondering if each of you sort of had a takeaway that you wanted to share with the audience. Some advice you could give them, or some encouragement in terms of coming up with new ideas, trying new things, because you're not going to find a new way to succeed unless you do try new things. Any advice you can give?
I'll go again.
Go ahead.
So I think there are a couple things. It's operationalize what you can.
Okay.
If there are processes, repeatable processes, and with our situation, a lot of it can be repeated, but don't be afraid to try something new every single time. And even with the sessions this week, there are a lot of ideas that we've written down that we want to incorporate into even just this campaign and others, but don't be afraid to try new.
Excellent. Bradley, anything you want to?
Same.
Same?
As far as like what you said as well about scaling up, scaling down, find what works, and maybe it was this specific thing, this specific tablet we sent that works, but maybe it was just the act of sending them something. So we also experiment with calendars, which is so much cheaper, and we're having some success with cheap direct mail, stuff like that. We're identify a process that works. It wasn't maybe necessarily the tablet that worked. So scaling up, scaling down, trying different things.
Be different.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you all. Hopefully you have some good takeaways here, and maybe next year you'll have a Finny Award and you'll be up here on the panel as well. So thanks again for coming.
Thank you.